Yeah, it does.
It'll just be me.
Somebody's always out. Oh, I will never be out. I've only been out once. Like next week I get sick.
You've never missed but once?
I haven't missed a day this year. 7th grade. I even came so last year or like a year. 2 years ago, my parents. I was in 8th grade, and my parents were going to Iceland, so I had to switch for their anniversary. So I had to switch my spring break, and so I did like the week before they did. So when they had their spring break and they came back, it was my spring break.
Yeah.
I still went to class.
God.
Yeah.
So committed.
Like, you gonna go to class? I'm like, yeah.
So you've never missed because you were sick?
I've never missed a day. Like,
that's something. Oh, you know what they're probably doing? Is burning off the ice. That sounds like to me.
yeah. What is it?
It is that. How did I recognize that sound? I don't know how I recognize that sound.
Oh my God, look at that. Mr. Downing.
That's just burned down now. Did you watch the film?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
With both parents. My mom was on it.
Awesome.
And my dog.
Put them through it.
Well, they wanted to watch it. My mom was like, I want to watch it.
That's good.
So we watched it Sunday night. I watched it on Sunday night. Best. Yeah.
Which one?
Elf.
Oh, yeah.
I love Elf.
It's like a... You guys just hit the jackpot. So let's see. Chloe is sick. She's sick. Alyssa.
She's not.
That
is so well. I saw her Sunday. Her sister's here. I think they finally got out of quarantine.
And
but I'm not sure.
Scout is sick. She's the most sick. She really does have the virus.
Are they not? They're melting the ice.
So look.
Yeah, they were. I love her. They were. Get all the ice off.
It's not very much ice. It's an Alabama ice.
We're gonna come on here. Look what they're not playing. The floor. Look. This is Alabama weather, guys.
Yeah.
People are like, oh my gosh, the high day is 47. I have to sleep. I don't get it. It's 47. The high. Oh my. That's so.
Where did they come from?
Oh, it's cold. Oh. Yeah, that's.
This is what I'm going to look at today.
Okay.
We did the first page.
We did like the first like 2 answers.
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. We've done a lot leading up to this. That's right. So we'll go through this. Now this is you guys have 4 pages. So a lot of it is going to be for homework. Yeah, Miss Womack made it.
Traffic was bad.
Really, when I came, there was 0 traffic.
I don't know. I just go through straight.
I was thinking that there's something wrong with the
My dad
traffic.
kept
They all
asking me
waited
to
for
tell
you.
him. Yeah, I did. He's like, is the right lane open? He's like, you had to check. I was like, why? I don't need to go in the right lane. There wasn't really any. I didn't know.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people.
Oh, big class.
4 people are 1 more person. 2 people are probably not going to make it because they're sick. And we're waiting on Candy. Anybody seen this flying? Maddox is not coming. And he's like exposed. We could all say we were exposed. We really wanted to.
Like, oh, we technically have that once.
There was this one person. What?
We technically have that once. Yay! It's so fun all in here.
Way to go. You made it. So what we're going to look at is this right here. Long stapled outline. Now here's the thing. You guys, how many classes do you have that you're working on all the time? This class and how many others?
Probably math and sometimes lit, sometimes not. Sometimes like procrastinate.
You do lit here?
Yes.
Yes. You do math here? Yes. Okay. Well, and then you have other things.
Mm-hmm.
How many do you have?
Here
Is it every day? Tuesday?
yeah.
You did 4 every a long day. Emma, what do you have?
3 here, 5 the rest. So I have 8 total.
Wow.
Oh my.
Well, better now than a little bit later.
Yeah, I'll have like.
Tammy, do you have a lot of classes?
Oh. I don't think so. I think I just take all my 4 classes like Spanish, English, math, science, history. I take math, history, and science here. And then I take.
So you come on Thursdays, Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What Thursday do you do?
8 or 9.
I know you have government.
8 or 9. Yeah.
And how many are here?
3.
Do you have final exams? Semester exams, you guys?
A lot here.
You have a lot?
And I'm worth a lot of.
Well, here's the thing about this class, this particular class. You're not gonna have a final exam, but it's not over everything. Okay, so you might think, well, that sounds kind of good. At least I don't have to go back to study everything that we've done. So basically, this is what you're gonna be tested on. This. Okay, so this is like a long study guide. We're going to go over that first page, and then for homework, I want you to just kind of go through this. There's a lot of blanks in here, and I just want you to just start studying. So your exam is going to be like a big test. It won't be a killer. It won't really help you a lot if you make 100. It will help, but it won't be like a normal exam, like in the government exam or in your lit exam. If you're on lit, that's usually a big old thing, and you need to study hard, and that's long. Plus, there's a paper probably, things like that. So this should kind of, don't think of this as easy, but it should be easier. Yeah.
It won't be like 200 points, right?
Well, it'll be about 200 points, which is not much, because normally it's about 600 points on an exam. Yeah. I mean, look, this last quiz that you guys did, that was 100 points, so it's just twice above this. You know what I'm saying? Or even you have homework, so you have this, what we don't cover today, I want you to go through this, and you might not be able to get them, but I want you to try. And so when you come to the next class, if you're well, you're going to just show me, I worked on this. Then we're going to go over it next week. And then you're going to be tested on it. Okay, so you'll be tested at home. It'll be real straightforward. It'll be just like this. So, but do a good job on this. Okay, so what I was going to say is the only other homework that you have that is due on Friday, this Friday, is to complete a map. And that's a real easy 100 points. So just get the map. It's going to be posted. You're going to do it, and you're going to just take a picture of it or turn it in by Google Docs, however you get it to me by Friday night. So that's something you can do really quickly. But anyway, so there's 2 things left. That's all you have. It's this test and the map. 300 points. So I asked you about that so you start pace. This is the first class that you have for this week, probably, and so just sort of pace yourself. Okay, that I can handle. This review is gold. This is the thing. Now, so there's a lot of things in here that I've sort of already written out for you to study, and we've gone over a lot of this. But anyway, so that's that. Let's kind of plunge in. Let's say. Let me do some slides because we have a short class today. And let's see. If you guys remember the
What do you want to talk about? Oh, shouldn't hear.
Well, you
Not last week.
Luckily, so there's some things like that I'll ask you. What made war inevitable? Those 4 things, and that's on here. But so we've gone through like the revolution, why we started the war, why we went for independence, and then there's like the main war, and that's what we need to look at right here. So in our outline here, 1775, Lexington and Concord, Bunker Hill. Okay, those are really the only 2 things that I remember that we talked about. And so the main thing to remember about these battles in the war is which one kind of came first, Lexington and Concord, then Bunker Hill, and then then I have here listed several. You're gonna kind of need to know those in order. It's not very difficult. I'm not going to ask you 12 different battles, but just Lexington and Concord was the first one, and then Bunker Hill. Okay, just looking down in 1776 is Dorchester Heights. Those all 3 are in Boston. We're going to look at that. Actually, we did briefly look at Dorchester Heights, but I think I'm just going to quickly look through those. And then we'll go to New York. And just looking down this sheet, how you read this. New York, and I'm dropping down to New Jersey. And that's what that film was about, one of the battles in New Jersey. And then there's Pennsylvania and New York. And then that's pretty much it. And the very last one, where you go down to 1781, the last great battle of the war. Okay, so we'll talk about that today. You will look this over for homework. We'll talk about it again. We're going to go over this whole thing. I'm going to give you a good rendition of what the test is going to be like in about 2 weeks. Now you can do this exam just so to pace yourself. Because this week and next week, your teachers are going to be saying, now the exam is on this day. You come for this, and you're going to be overwhelmed a little bit. But so get this compartmentalized. This is just a test. A 200-point test, and it's on this. And this is going to be at home. It's going to be on the Google Docs. And it's going to be posted. This is what I plan to do, but you can have it earlier if you want. It's the Monday. In other words, it's about 2 weeks from yesterday. It'll be on a Monday morning. If you need it early, now you're going to be thinking about Christmas as soon as you finish today. Your parents and everybody's going to be starting to talk about Christmas. You're going to think, it's almost over. It's right. But you need to pace yourself and make sure you know when your exams are. And if you're going out of town, you need to do this before you go. Don't do it afterwards. You can, if your parents say, let her just do it, I'll be totally fine with that. But for your sake, get it over with. Knock these tests out. Yeah.
So our exam, we'll take it home next Friday.
It's possible you could do it next Friday.
Or we can do it soon.
But I'm going to do it on Monday. But it'll be ready. You could do it next Wednesday. If you want, right after our class. It'll be ready. But if you need to come, if you're sick or something, make sure that you watch the recording of all the reviews. And that's what this is the review, but we're going to orally review it. And make sure you go to all your exam reviews. You know, if you go to college, but one day they do reviews before tests. Go to those. Even if you're like, I know everything. Go to it. It will really help. They'll tell you all the things that's going to be in the exam. Question? You look confused. Okay. So when we look at the battles, so you probably have never studied battles before, and you're getting an introduction in here, right? That's the way for all kinds of people. The thing to remember is, what's the significance of the battle? Not all the details. The details are fun and interesting, but what is significant? In other words, significant means what is super important about it. If this did not happen, would the world have been changed? If yes, then it's significant. There's a lot of things that have happened. Like I go like this. Is that significant? Maybe if I now broke it, and now this doesn't work, and then I ask you to teach the class now, and then from then on you're the teacher, and then I love teaching, and that was significant. You know, okay, that's a stretch. Like she didn't know she wanted to be a teacher until I broke this. But in a battle like the Battle of Bunker Hill, that was a battle. Do they study that battle at West Point? Do they study that battle all around the world? Not really. It's not one of those kind of battles like, oh man, they did this thing that was never been done before and they surprised it. No, it's pretty straightforward. They're up on the hill and they came up the hill and it took them 3 tries and finally they made it up the hill and then they made a run. Okay, that's not significant. But what is significant about Bunker Hill is that it was so bloody. It was so bloody that the British went crazy. They went crazy and said, "We won a battle, and and they don't give up, and we're gonna this is gonna be a major war." So I skipped Lexington Concord significance, but the Bunker Hill significance. It was so bloody on the British mainly. The Americans lost some people, Joseph Warren, some leaders, but they were up on the hill. They shot 3 times, and the British kept coming. And so instead of being bayoneted, they ran away. And so the British got the hill, but it was way too precious of a price. They just got a hill, but they got bloody. And why is that significant? Is that meant because they were so bloody just for a hill, that the British said, we're going to war now. We're going to go on an all-out war against the Americans. So that is super significant because we're talking about how did we get into war? How did it go from the Boston Massacre and the Boston Tea Party and the taxes and all that, the Tea Act, the Stamp Act and all that, no taxation without representation. How did it go from all that, which is bad enough, to like, this is a major war now, the Bunker Hill? And that's significant. Okay, back up to the significance of Lexington and Concord. Lexington and Concord is significant because that was the very first battle. First battles are significant. Sometimes nothing really special happens, but it's the first one, and so it's significant. It's sort of like in a fight between 2 people. One person just goes like this, hey, you got something on your nose. Stop. Hey, don't hit me, he says. I wasn't hitting you, I was touching your nose. Well, don't touch my nose. Like, so the touching the nose didn't seem significant, but it was. It started the whole thing. Somebody wakes you up real early in your house, and they come into the kitchen, and they're looking for coffee and stuff all by themselves. They're quiet, they're putting in the water, they're washing dishes, and then all of a sudden somebody else comes into the kitchen and says, hey, where are my donuts? Or something like that. And it's something just normal as can be. And this person who's in there all by herself gets offended. Could that possibly happen? Like, where are my donuts? What about your donuts? I'm washing the dishes and I'm fixing my own thing, and I was in here by myself. Oh, you might feel like threatened, like, what are you talking about, the donuts? I don't know about your donuts, and you're talking with a tone like I did something. And so for about 10 minutes, that person is like offended over nothing. It happens all the time. And so that's significant. How you come into the room when somebody is just waking up. Believe me, I've practiced this for 20 years being a teacher with young people early in the morning when I'm like wide awake. And I know that other people are not. And so, like I wanted to like go into this like full blast, and fight all these battles and talk about it. And so I could do it at 6 in the morning every single morning. But wait, not everybody's like that. So you have to. So Lexington and Concord is the first battle, and it showed that the Americans had a lot. They were like motivated. So, under significance of Lexington and Concord, it's the first battle. It kind of started the battles. It's the first one. And it showed that the Americans were motivated. Like they were going to defend themselves. If you go, now remember, why did they try to, what were the two reasons why the British went to Lexington and Concord in the first place? What were they trying to do? There were two things they were trying to do. Get the Americans ammunition that was stored there. Yes. And to arrest the American leaders. And those two people that they were going to arrest was Sam Adams. Paul Revere. Paul Revere is the one who went to warn everybody that they're coming. Eventually he signed the Declaration of Independence. He's the first to sign the Declaration.
Oh. Was it a John something?
It was a John.
John Hancock.
John Hancock. He signed it really large. He was the first to sign it. Okay. They were from Boston. Okay, so that's why they went there, and it ended up that battle. Okay, then after the Lexington and Concord, the British, what you need to remember is that under the significance, like that is a question you need. This is what every adult, every American needs to know, is where there's a significance. You need to know that. That is what changed everything. So Lexington and Concord's significance, it was the first one that showed the motivation, but what did it do to the British? It made the British say, you know what? We're not going to go out into their little areas and fight them again because they're like Indians. They're motivated, and the Americans are like Indians. And what we need is a really big battle. Let the Americans come to us in Boston, near Boston, in a meadow somewhere, and we're going to just destroy them. So Lexington and Concord made the British say, we're not going to have a little battles all over the country. We're going to have one big, gigantic battle. We're going to have all the Americans and all the British, and we're going to have one gigantic European type of battle with cannons and everything. And we'll slaughter them. And that's where they thought was Bunker Hill was going to be. That's what they wanted. That was near Boston. It was on a very isolated peninsula. It was hilly. But they thought, the Americans will be up on that hill, and they'll think that they'll be protected, but we will get them in that one big battle. So it's sort of like Lexington and Concord, arrow to Bunker Hill. Lexington and Concord made the Battle of Bunker Hill. Then the Battle of Bunker Hill is significant because it was bloody, and it led to all-out war on the British side. So notice this is not really significant in terms for the Americans yet. You see that Lexington and Concord was mostly significant on the British side. Bunker Hill was mostly significant on the British side. The Americans fought at Bunker Hill, and they actually lost. Remember Nathaniel Greene, one of the generals, said, I wish we could sell them another hill for the same price. Like, The British lost 1,200 men taking that hill. And what did they get with that hill? They got a hill. Who cares about that hill? The Americans just moved out 5 miles back to Lexington and Concord and Cambridge and Dorchester Heights and around Boston and just said, you can have that hill. You want to have another battle like that? We'll have a lot of battles like that. You take a little hill and you lose 1,000 guys each time. You understand the principle? So the British are kind of going crazy. Lexington and Concord said, we're going to have a big battle. So they have a big battle, Bunker Hill. They have a big battle, and they won, but they lost. And so now the British are even more crazy. They're saying, we're going to have an all-out, gigantic war now. And we're going to control North America. We're going to control Virginia and New York and everything. They just went crazy. Do you understand? Do you understand? But in order to do that, in order to control all of North America, all of the Americans, all the 13 colonies, with an army, they have to have a large British army. But they didn't have a large British army. It was large, but not large enough. And so what did the British do to get more men on their side? Remember those significance? Those 4 events that was significant. They brought in Hessians, Germans. And so that is key. So Bunker Hill points to they hired Hessians. They want to have a big war, but they need a big army. Bigger than they even had. They had the biggest army, but they still needed bigger. How are they going to go to Georgia and North Carolina, South Carolina, and all those colonies and have a giant war? They need a big, larger army. And so they said, we need some more people. And the British, at home in Britain, they didn't have enough army. So they hired Hessians. And you guys watched the film about the Americans defeating the Hessians in a surprise attack. If you have notes or something, you can show me your notes. Awesome. I didn't even have to ask you any questions. All the questions are there. Now, you didn't have to have notes, but I'm going to ask you some questions. Okay. And if you have any, to get full credit, you need to have your email or a letter from your parents that you watch the show. Okay, so Bunker Hill leads to the hiring of the Hessians. Okay, let's move a little bit one more down. So now it is the beginning of 1776. We're talking about January 1776. Just so you know, Lexington and Concord was April the 19th of 75, and Bunker Hill is June of 75. So it's very close in there. And then you move ahead about 6 months to Dorchester Heights, January. Now this is a significant battle, but it was not really a battle. This was, I'm going to just fast forward through this part. Although it is super significant. Here's the basics of Dorchester Heights. We're still in Boston. All 3 of those are in Boston. I might ask you a question. Give me 3 of the early battles that happened around Boston. Lexington, Concord, Bunker Hill, Dorchester Heights. Now, Dorchester Heights is a high ground around Boston. Now, remember, Bunker Hill was to the north of Boston. Dorchester Heights is actually to the south of Boston. But it's like Bunker Hill in its high ground. It's not a mountain like in Chattanooga or anything. It's just a hill. It's not even like going to Chelsea to the Double Oak Mountain. It's not that. It's more like, you know, if you're from Alabama, there's hills. It's just a little higher hill. Okay, but it can be significant if you're going to fight a battle. Better be on top of the hill instead of at the bottom of the hill. Okay, so Dorchester Heights was, as the name says, it's the heights. It's a high ground. And the Americans took that high ground like they did at Bunker Hill. Okay. And what they did this time, though, that was different, is they put cannons up on those hills. Okay, so the significance about this is they put cannons on the top of the hills, and they then controlled all of Boston with the cannons. Now remember, Bunker Hill, they controlled that hill, but they didn't have any cannons. And so the British just put an army there and ran them off that hill. But if the Americans had had cannons on top of that hill pointing down, they could have really messed up that army even more that was attacking them. So the British changed from the Americans having Dorchester Heights. They made the British, the significance of it is they made the British leave Boston forever. So if you think of this first 6 months or 8 months of the whole war, it wasn't in Americans' mind even a war yet. It wasn't really even a war yet. There was Lexington and Concord, they did pretty well. Bunker Hill, they did pretty well. Dorchester Heights, they did really well, and the British just left. Now, why did the British leave? Is because the Americans controlled the high ground with their cannons. Now, if you have a city that is controlled from the high ground, and Boston, if you remember, you guys did homework assignments on it, looking at the maps. Boston is a peninsula itself. It's a city surrounded by water on both sides. And so the British had fleet there. They had a lot of boats, big ships, and each of those ships have cannons on them, and they have lots of men on them. It's very expensive ships. And so if the Americans are controlling the high ground around Boston with cannons that can hit ships, they had to move their ships out. Otherwise, the Americans would start shooting at the ships. And the ships, those sail ships, they're really slow. They're fast once you get going on the high seas. But if you're, no motors, so if the cannon is beaming down on you, boom, that's close. Boom, that's closer. Oh God, they're about to hit us. Okay, let's go. It doesn't go very fast. They have to put up the sails. It's going about this fast, like literally like 1 mile an hour. Then it's 2 miles an hour. And it takes like an hour to get up to 5 miles an hour. Like by that time, those cannons had put holes all over those ships, and they couldn't afford to leave their fleet in Boston. And so Dorchester Heights is significant because that's when the British left Boston. Now, there's a question in there. I'm gonna ask it for you. There's a question in there. Why did not the Americans put cannons in Bunker Hill? If cannons are so great, why didn't they put cannons up there? Why did they do it at Dorchester Heights?
They didn't have them.
They didn't have any. That's right. They did not have cannons on Bunker Hill. They didn't have any in 1775. They didn't get those cannons until the winter of 76. They didn't get those cannons. And so how did they get cannons? They didn't make them. They stole some cannons from the British. They had done a battle up in the north near Canada, the north part of New York, called Fort Ticonderoga. And you guys did some homework on this, and it's in this review here. Fort Ticonderoga is a British fort that was seized by the Green Mountain Boys, a little contingent of Americans from Vermont and New Hampshire, and they went and they took over this fort, and in that fort was a bunch of cannons, and so they brought those cannons from New York to Massachusetts in the snow and ice and incredible feat. And so they brought those all the way to Boston and put those on Dorchester Heights. They would have put them on Bunker Hill if they could have, but by this time they had lost Bunker Hill, and so they put them in Dorchester Heights, and that made the British say, okay, we're leaving Boston. Because we don't want to do, because if you look what they did before, is Lexington and Concord was a disaster. Bunker Hill was a disaster. And if they do Dorchester Heights, guess what's going to happen? It's going to be another one of those disasters. Like, we'll take Dorchester Heights, but we won't get anything for it. You could say, well, you would at least not have to leave Boston. But the British started thinking, like, oh, Boston's not working out. Let's go to New York. And so Roman numeral 2 is New York, and there's a whole bunch of battles there. And we're about to talk about it. Now, here's something to jot down into this sort of sequence of events. There's something to remember about all of this, is there's George Washington. Like, where is George Washington in this? We haven't even mentioned him, really. He wasn't at Lexington and Concord. He wasn't at Bunker Hill. However, it was his idea, the Dorchester Heights. So George Washington was, remember, he was a surveyor. We talked about him. He was from Virginia, was a delegate to the Congress in Virginia. He was a very righteous person, very spiritual person, great family, wealthy, great farmer, amazing person. He also fought in the French and Indian War. Remember, he was significant in saving the army there and all that. Okay, he wanted to be in the British Army. He wanted to be in the British Army. And they said, no, you're from Virginia. We don't have British officers from Virginia. They have to be from England. Okay, so that put a little chip on his shoulder, fast forwarding through his life. And then the American Revolution starts. And you don't really hear that much in history. He's not in the forefront of the protests like with Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death. He's not in the forefront of Declaration of Independence even. When in the course of human events, all that. That's not George Washington. He agreed with all that, but he's in the background. He was more of thinking military. If this becomes a military thing, I'd like to do it. And it starts becoming a military thing. Lexington, Concord, and Bunker Hill. And after Bunker Hill, the Second Continental Congress elects Washington as commander-in-chief. George Washington, GW, becomes the commander-in-chief basically in June of 1776. Right after Bunker Hill. And also, you guys know that there's a Declaration of Independence and all that. I got this actually wrong. Okay. It's a 5 there. Keep pushing that. 1775, June 75, George Washington becomes the commander-in-chief. His idea was you see, what color is that? That slide. It's purple. And what's the shade?
Oh, it's the Purple Heart.
That's the Purple Heart. And what's that word?
Merit.
Merit. In other words, you get a Purple Heart if you have merit in battle. If you get wounded, also. Okay, so George Washington becomes commander-in-chief in 75, right as the Bunker Hill is happening. And he is sent to Boston. And he gets to Boston after Bunker Hill. And his idea was like, let's take Dorchester Heights. But we don't have any cannons. Let's get some cannons here. So those are his basic ideas. Okay, so this is something like, which of the following battles was George Washington significant in? Was it Lexington, Concord, Bunker Hill, Dorchester Heights? Okay, that would be a simple question, but that's sort of like the basic thing. Like, those are the kind of questions I'm going to ask you generally about battles. Which of the following battles was really significant in that cannons played a big part? Okay, yeah, you got to the chase. Like, I see it coming. Okay. Now, there's as we go, we're going to go through this. We're going to go faster in just a second. Okay, but the main thing is how it's always significant when you're doing a history class. It's this way in literature too. Like, who are the main characters and what is going on? Okay. In math, what are the multiplication tables? Do you know all of those? Do you know how to subtract? Otherwise, it's just useless to go forward in the high math. Science. Do you know this chemical and this chemical? Do you know what's going to happen when you put those two together? Okay, so to get that thing, when they come together is really important. But what were those two chemicals? I don't remember. Well, then you're not going to understand what happened. Okay, so what we're doing in history in this class is we're making sure that you get what started it, not what happened. What happened is really important, but the most important is how did it get started? Why did they write the Declaration of Independence? Questions like that. Like, what is the Declaration? It's awesome. But why did they have those ideas? Why is that in there? What came before that? Why is your sister mad at you for the donuts? I don't know. Well, you need to know. It's like, you woke her up too early. That's what happened. It's something really basic. Okay? So I've kind of hinted here about the significance. Okay, there's something, go back to the Bunker Hill thing about significance. Now, when the British went up that hill, this is all very important. This is how the whole war is won at the very beginning. There's a whole bunch of battles, and you just wonder, like, George Washington, he won this battle, he lost this battle. He won this battle, he lost this battle. And then all of a sudden, we won the war. Like, I don't even know what. And then that's how most people learn the whole thing is, just kind of lucky, or kind of a miracle, or just he's awesome. I don't know. Just let's go on to something else now. And I want because it's very important to understand significance of things. Why did that happen? Not what happened. What happened is interesting, but that's not the main thing. Why did it happen? Okay, if you go back to Bunker Hill, when the British took that hill, how did they take the hill? They went up that hill straight away 3 times, and on the third one, they finally took it. Remember that? And it's just real basic. There's the enemy. Here we are. Let's go. And we talked about this. And what kind of tactic is that? Or strategy? We call it something. When they went straight towards the enemy. The British went straight towards us. What? That's right. That is it. So it was the Bunker Hill was also significant in that the British did a frontal attack. A frontal attack. Now, why would they do that? We talked about this. A frontal attack is just so straightforward. You're there, I'm here, I'm coming after you. You're coming? Are you coming right at me? Yeah, I'm coming right at you. Why would you do that? Because you have contempt for them. And you want to show that you're just better. And even though you know I'm coming, I'm still coming right at you. And I'm still going to take the hill, and you're going to run. And that's what happened. But that is a significant mistake for the whole war. Because what they should have done is surrounded Bunker Hill and captured all of them without a battle. Or they could have done it a different way. You don't just march in red coats up the hill, slow as possible, getting shot at. When we get up there, we'll fire. Okay, when we get up there, and then they ran back down the hill. Oh, that was bad. I can't believe we did that. Let's do it one more time. That is such a male thing. Females would never do this. That's why males are all in the army, and females not very many. Because females like, that was stupid. Don't do that again. No, let's do it one more time. We want to show them that we're going to knock them off the hill. Walk slow as possible up that hill, and we shoot one back. They're still there. Let's run back down. Okay, one more idea. What's the idea? And don't say do that again. Well, we're going to do it that same thing again. Oh, except this time we're going to run up the hill. It's still a frontal attack. And they ran up the hill. The reason why they took the hill is because the Americans had run out of ammunition. And so then they said, hey, they're not shooting back. Okay, keep going with their bayonets. Okay, so then the Americans ran away. But that was a mistake. It's because, what is the significance that you wrote about the Bunker Hill? It was so bloody. And it made the British go crazy. And they wanted to have a gigantic war, but they needed Hessians. They needed more people. So all of this has to do with the frontal attack. If they could have won that battle, if they hadn't done the frontal attack, they wouldn't have lost as near as many people if they didn't if they had done some other tactic. But they did the frontal attack. Don't ever forget this. This is like a teensy little thing to most people, but this is the whole war right here. This is how we won the whole thing. Is by that battle. The British made, at the end of that battle, they came down, we took the hill, okay, very good. Okay, how many people we lost? Like everybody. We're going to change everything. Gates was fired. Remember, Gates was the head of the commander-in-chief of the British, so they sent him back to Europe, and they brought in some other people, Howe and Burgoyne and Clinton and some other people, Cornwallis. All these people are going to have a gigantic war. I can kind of do the Indian style of Gates. Okay, so here's the thing. They said in the debriefing, we will never again do this, the British said. Remember Bunker Hill? That was a mistake. Do not do this against the Americans. And you say, and I might say, agree with you, like, that sounds like they're kind of getting smart. Well, no, you don't ever say never. Don't say never just because it was that one time. Like, let's say you're driving the car, and you drive, and it's a 55 miles per hour speed limit, and then you go 60, and some policeman who's really particular says, I'm going to get that person. You were going 62 miles an hour in a 55, so I'm going to give you a ticket. It's $100. And if you're like me, like all of us are mostly this way, like, I can't believe I got a ticket, and it affects you for a long time, for weeks and months. You just think, and so. For weeks and months, you never do what? Speed. What if it's 70 mile per hour speed limit? No, I don't go over 62 ever again. Okay, that's a little bit too hyper there. That's a lot. That's right. You don't ever say, look, it depends on the situation. No, I never pass on the left again. When I pass on the left, I hit a car. I hit a can in the road one time. Like, what? That happened one time. Watch out for cans. It's not, you don't say never. Okay, so this is significant. See if you guys can get this. Is the British did the frontal attack and it was a mistake. But then they made an extreme counter to that, said, we'll never do that again. And so save that. Save that. That's significant. Save that. Never do it from them. They learned a lesson, but they learned the wrong lesson. Be careful. They should say, let's don't do the frontal attack. Let's do the frontal attack only when it's necessary, not never. Okay. So George Washington comes in 75. At the beginning of 76, they take Dorchester Heights. George Washington's idea, he's success. The main army is in Boston. Now they have an American army is decent, but the British left Boston, right? And they go to New York City. They go to New York City. Let's see if I can get some in the summer of 76. So after Dorchester Heights is in the spring of 76, by the way. Spring. I have from January to the spring was Dorchester Heights. So this is a whole year later, George Washington has been commander-in-chief. Now they go to New York because the British have gone to New York. The British left Boston. Boston is up here, and came to New York. Now why did the British have to have a big city? Well, because they're going to be bringing in an army and a navy from England, and they need a big city to stay in for their fleet and so forth. So, This is a whole bunch of battles that are going to take place. Now, notice. Here's New York City. If you've been here, here's Brooklyn, Staten Island, Harlem, Bronx. This is New Jersey right here. Okay. So the British, generally speaking, are going to come into the British here are in red. This is a big generalization now. They're going to come in and win battles at Brooklyn. They're going to win battles across Manhattan and at White Plains and Washington and Lee. And then they're going to make the Americans are going to be retreating this dotted blue line the whole time. Another way of looking at it here is Washington with 20,000 men. This is super sad. You guys watched that movie and there was like 1,500 men. They had 20,000. Washington, commander-in-chief, but by June of 76, they had men from all over the colonies, 20,000. And they're going to go against the British, who are going to come with, 10,000. Clinton, Cornwallis, and Percy, 10,000. In other words, the Americans have an advantage 2-1. But the British outmaneuver them like crazy. Now, so this, in other words, this is what the British wanted all along, was a big battle with lots of armies, with flags and everything, and horses and all that. And the British were going to take them out. And they do at New York. So New York, you have Long Island, Brooklyn, Harlem Heights, White Plains, Fort Washington, Lee. All of these are battles. And all of them are lost by the Americans. So what you should say is, a little bit like all losing battles. Not under the significance, but under just to know that those are all losing battles. And it forces the Americans under Washington, they lost an entire army, or 90% of an army, and it forces them to retreat to New Jersey. Now, the significance of New York, the significance is, notice, many defeats. Washington is like he won at Dorchester Heights, and then he loses like 8 battles. He's like 1-8 if you did a record on that. But the significance is the army survives. The army survives. The American army survives. And it's dwindled down, but it survives. Washington, Nathaniel Greene, Sterling, Sullivan, those generals, Glover, they survive. Now, if you go back, if you went to that movie, there was a guy, if you remember the character named Glover. He was a guy who was always complaining. He was kind of a smaller guy, not in a uniform. And he's the guy in charge of all the boats. That was a real part. All those people are very accurately depicted, except for the language. And General Glover was famous. He was a Massachusetts fisherman, and he allowed the army to retreat. He was surrounded at Brooklyn Heights. Right here, the army, that 20,000 had to retreat into Brooklyn. They were all right on this edge. And the British were surrounding it. They could have lost the entire army, Washington included, and all the generals. But Glover got the men to retreat across this water with the British fleet right next to it. So one of the significance of that, all of that New York, is the army survives by retreating. So General Washington is awesome at retreating. If you guys look on the next page, summing up, the American victory in the War for Revolution was a product of many factors. Divine providence, Washington's leadership. If you look under Washington's leadership, let's see, maybe not. Yeah, I thought I put that in there. Washington's leadership. He was resourceful. Okay, he was able to run away very well. He was resourceful, imaginative, surprise, mass his forces, unity of command, maneuver. And maneuver means on offense and defense. It means run away when you have to. Survive. Okay, one more. Let's do Roman numeral 3, the 2 victories in New Jersey. When they retreated, they retreated all the way from New York, through Pennsylvania, through New Jersey, across the Delaware. And then they had an idea to attack at Trenton. Blurry, though it was. Across the Delaware, under a new flag. This is what you guys watched. They had one army going this way, one army going this way, and they met here at Trenton and took all 900 of the Hessians. Okay, that's good. So the 2 victories in New Jersey was Trenton and Princeton. That's right, and it happened all within a week. Normally I would be asking you a question like, hey, what famous holiday was the Battle of Trenton? Christmas. And what famous holiday was the Battle of Princeton?
New Year's.
New Year's. Awesome. That's right. And so those are significant because they were the first time that the Americans had an offensive victory. We'll talk about it. What I want you to do is go through some of this, all of this, go through it, and some of this you'll be able to fill in some blanks, and we'll talk about it. Especially jump to page 3 and 4 on the people. That's what I would really like for you to look at. You got it, you guys. Do good in all your classes. Survive. Survive. Hey.
Mr. Johnny, why is it so